Not all light reveals. Some darkness preserves what light would destroy. In the remote recesses of arcane knowledge, beyond the reach of daylight in the domain of conventional religious structures, resides a figure enveloped in profound secrecy. Lucifuge Rofocale. His name survives in fragmented whispers among the ruins of abandoned monasteries and in the fragile, soot-darkened pages of clandestine grimoires. He is designated as the one who flees the light, an architect of esoteric wisdom and a principal agent in the domain of infernal pacts.
The invocation of Lucifuge Rofocale is not an endeavor to be undertaken lightly. It constitutes a deliberate engagement with ancient and formidable forces that exhibit no allegiance to compassion or human vulnerability. Lucifuge's most recognized manifestation appears within the Grand Grimoire, a seminal text of black magic purportedly emerging from the shadows of the 16th century, although some contend that its origins are considerably older. Within its pages, Lucifuge is presented not merely as a demon, but as the Prime Minister of Hell, a figure administering hidden operations where Lucifer embodies overt rebellion. This portrayal invites contemplation of the paradox contained within his name. He who retreats from the light, safeguarding mysteries too perilous for the uninitiated.
In Lucifuge's domain, darkness does not signify the absence of light, but represents a substantial and dynamic reality, a primordial existence surpassing the superficial clarity offered by reason.
In many Western traditions, darkness has been interpreted as a void synonymous with evil. However, for ancient mystics and Gnostics, darkness was perceived as a fertile and sacred medium, a precondition for the emergence of all creation. The Gnostic mythos concerning Sophia's descent into matter portrays this immersion into darkness not merely as a fall, but as an essential journey toward the reclamation of wisdom. Thus, Lucifuge Rofocale can be interpreted not as an adversary of enlightenment, but as its rigorous custodian, compelling aspirants to confront darkness as a prerequisite for genuine knowledge.
To summon Lucifuge is to embrace a voluntary blindness, a symbolic descent into the unknown where insight is cultivated through darkness rather than despite it. As articulated in an alchemical maxim, the eye must be closed to open the mind.
Those who fear darkness misconstrue its significance. Those who embrace it risk encountering the profound madness that often precedes authentic gnosis. The pacts outlined in the Grand Grimoire are not simplistic fables, but complex instructions for existential transformation. The magician engaging with Lucifuge does not merely entreat, but demands, negotiates, and binds himself through blood oaths sealed in dread. Ritualists must seek Lucifuge at the Crossroads, an ancient locus where destinies intersect at the liminal hour of midnight. They must present offerings, often of an unspeakable nature, and recite blasphemous inversions of sacred prayers. No agreement with Lucifuge is without cost. Payments are rendered not in material wealth but in sovereignty and spiritual illumination, with the very soul at stake. A. Waite, a distinguished historian of the occult, observed that the demons of the Grand Grimoire represent human ambition stripped of ethical constraint, crystallized in unmediated cruelty. Within this framework, Lucifuge is not a monstrous other, but a distilled reflection of human will, uncloaked, unrepentant, and indifferent to conventional morality. He embodies the Faustian aspiration, the relentless drive for transcendence at any cost. Even his nomenclature reveals profound symbolism. Derived from the Latin lux, light, and fugere, to flee, Lucifuge translates directly as he who flees the light. Rofocale is an anagrammatic construction that alludes to folklore, a demon associated with tempests, and intriguingly to Lucifer himself. Unlike Lucifer, who elevates a torch defiantly, Lucifuge withdraws into the fertile obscurity of night, nurturing unseen growths that the daylight would wither. Lucifuge's veiling of truth resonates with broader mystical principles. Islamic esotericism posits the concept of batin, hidden knowledge, accessible only through inner perception. Kabbalah offers Ein Sof, the infinite that eludes direct comprehension. Christian mysticism contemplates the cloud of unknowing, wherein God is encountered through surrender rather than reasoned apprehension. Lucifuge thus emerges as the guardian of mysteries too delicate for unfiltered revelation. Contemporary occult traditions, especially those associated with the left-hand path, reinterpret Lucifuge not merely as a demon, but as an archetype of self-deification. He signifies the imperative of personal sovereignty. No external savior shall intervene. Each individual must claim lordship over their own being. Carl Jung would have recognized in Lucifuge the archetype of the shadow, the repository of disowned aspects of the psyche. To engage Lucifuge is to confront this shadow, acknowledging the elements of the self that have been repressed or denied. Jung warned one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Thus, Lucifuge embodies not evil, but an indispensable component of individuation. Lucifuge persists not solely as a relic of ancient grimoires, but as an enduring presence within the collective unconscious. He manifests wherever human beings grapple with ambition, fear, and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. He is the sentinel of the inner descent, the dark gatekeeper through whom the aspirant must pass before attaining genuine illumination. For those who would invoke him, whether out of reckless curiosity or deliberate intent, the central question remains: what are you willing to sacrifice to acquire knowledge that perhaps ought never to be known? To explore the origins of Lucifuge Rofocale is to enter a complex labyrinth where history and myth intertwine. The grimoires that bear his name are not the work of a single author, but represent the gradual sedimentation of centuries' worth of clandestine knowledge, superstitions, and spiritual ambitions. These texts accumulated incrementally, much like layers of ash atop an ancient burial site. Lucifuge Rofocale's most prominent appearance is within the Grand Grimoire, a pivotal text wherein he emerges in his full regalia. This work did not materialize through a singular moment of creation, rather it is a composite document shaped by diverse traditions circulating within Europe's occult undercurrents during the volatile centuries following the medieval period. While many scholars situate its initial composition in the 16th century, linguistic and thematic elements suggest antecedents that trace back to earlier necromantic traditions, late antique theurgical rites, and localized folk beliefs.
In the Grand Grimoire, Lucifuge assumes a role not merely as a tempter, but as a structured bureaucrat of the infernal domain, bearing the title of Prime Minister of Hell.
His depiction reflects a bureaucratic model of damnation, cold, efficient, and governed by contracts rather than raw displays of power. The grimoire itself, often alternately titled Le Dragon Rouge, the Red Dragon, embodies this chimerical nature. Widely circulated printed editions only became prevalent during the 19th century, distributed discreetly among secret societies in cities such as Paris and Naples. Many copies were disguised with ecclesiastical covers or hidden within private esoteric collections, further emphasizing their illicit status. The language of the Grand Grimoire, a blend of rigid contractual formulas and barbarous invocations, betrays its synthetic origins. It is not the product of spontaneous inspiration, but a deliberate curation of pre-existing magical traditions, systematized in response to an emerging crisis of faith. As Enlightenment rationalism advanced, it displaced traditional religious certainties, creating a cultural vacuum wherein occultism reemerged as a form of spiritual resistance. This historical backdrop explains the Grand Grimoire's resonance. It answered a profound cultural hunger for mysteries, more substantial than those offered by either mechanistic science or institutional religion. Its promises of wielding hidden powers and circumventing visible hierarchies were particularly seductive in an era when mystery and enchantment appeared to be vanishing from public life.
Within this context, Lucifuge's role reflects deep-seated human anxieties about the nature of power and transaction. His emphasis on formalized contractual pacts mirrors the increasing commodification of life during the rise of capitalist economies.
In Lucifuge's infernal court, every gain demands an equivalent sacrifice. Every secret disclosed entails a forfeiture. Thus, he embodies the brutal economy of the human soul under conditions of alienation and exchange. Beneath this social critique lies a far older archetype. Lucifuge echoes the characteristics of ancient chthonic figures, such as Hermes Chthonios, guide of souls into the underworld, or Hades, sovereign of subterranean riches. These deities were not purely destructive forces, but custodians of hidden treasures, guardians of wisdom accessible only to those willing to traverse death and darkness. Furthermore, Lucifuge's title, Prime Minister of Hell, reflects an inversion of celestial hierarchies familiar to medieval angelology. The classification of demons into bureaucratic ranks, mirroring the choirs of angels described by thinkers such as Pseudo-Dionysius, underscores a broader cultural inversion, where Christian theology posits salvation as an unmerited gift. The Grand Grimoire depicts damnation as a contractual agreement, subverting traditional religious paradigms. Lucifuge's portrayal is not static even within the Grand Grimoire itself. Across various editions and translations, subtle divergences emerge. In certain versions, he is described as incapable of withstanding the direct gaze of a consecrated wand. In others, his summoning requires not only the invocation of sacred names, but also alignment with specific astrological configurations. These variations reveal the living nature of the grimoire tradition, a continuous process of reinterpretation shaped by local beliefs and evolving esoteric practices. Lucifuge's influence extends beyond the Grand Grimoire. In texts such as the Grimorium Verum, likely dating to the early 18th century, similar spirits of contract and coercion appear, such as Skirlin and Alabec. Although Lucifuge himself is absent by name, the thematic continuity underscores a broader cultural fixation on the transactional structure of the infernal realm. Thus, Lucifuge Rofocale emerges not merely as a literary invention, but as a dynamic archetype, an expression of evolving human fears, desires, and spiritual negotiations. His persistence through centuries of religious, scientific, and cultural upheaval speaks to his profound resonance within the human psyche, a testament to the enduring power of hidden knowledge and the eternal temptation to seize it, regardless of the cost.
If you're loving this journey into the hidden and the mystical, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to bring a little magic into your own space, check out the Dark Memorial on Etsy and Shopify. Handmade candles, incense, ritual tools, crafted with real intention just for your practice. Links are below if you want to explore. Now, back to the video.
The figure of Lucifuge Rofocale embodies a profound symbolic tension between illumination and concealment, between visible knowledge and hidden wisdom. His very name signifies an inversion of the expected spiritual trajectory. Whereas Lucifer, the Lightbringer, seeks to disseminate illumination, Lucifuge is characterized by his deliberate flight from light, his immersion in the mysteries obscured by darkness.
This polarity can be interpreted through the archetype of the hidden sun, a symbol recurrent across multiple mystical and esoteric traditions.
In ancient cosmologies, the sun was often understood not merely as a physical entity, but as a metaphysical principle representing pure consciousness and divine clarity. Yet it was also acknowledged that there exists a hidden aspect of the sun, an interior nocturnal force veiled from ordinary perception. This concept is manifest in alchemical texts, where the black sun represents a crucial stage in the process of inner transformation, a necessary descent into darkness preceding the emergence of true enlightenment. Lucifuge Rofocale in this schema represents the guardian of the black sun. He presides over the phase of spiritual alchemy in which dissolution, confusion, and apparent regression are essential preconditions for authentic rebirth. To encounter Lucifuge is thus to confront the paradox that the deepest truths often emerge not through the amplification of light, but through its deliberate occlusion. The reversal of light symbolized by Lucifuge carries profound philosophical implications. It challenges the simplistic dualism that equates light with goodness and darkness with evil. Instead, it posits that darkness possesses its own integrity, richness, and generative capacity. Within darkness, seeds germinate unseen. Within the hidden, new realities are incubated.
The darkness the Lucifuge champions is not barren but fecund. It is the gestational void from which authentic transformation is born.
To flee the light, in Lucifuge's case, is not to reject knowledge but to shield it, to preserve it from premature exposure and corruption. This reversal also reflects the structure of initiation across numerous esoteric systems. True initiation is rarely characterized by immediate clarity or triumphant revelation. Rather, it often demands that the aspirant pass through confusion, symbolic death, and disintegration before emerging into a higher state of consciousness. The uninitiated may perceive this passage as regression or defeat, yet to the initiated it is recognized as an indispensable phase of transformation. In Christian mysticism, this dynamic is articulated through the doctrine of the via negativa, the path of negation, whereby the divine is approached not through affirmations but through successive acts of unknowing and surrender. Similarly, in Kabbalistic thought, the divine essence, Ein Sof, is understood to exist beyond all categories of thought and vision, concealed behind infinite veils. Lucifuge thus occupies an essential position within this broader symbolic economy. He signifies the necessity of withdrawal, the sacredness of concealment, and the peril inherent in the quest for forbidden knowledge. His association with contracts, oaths, and pacts reflects the existential weight of this journey. Access to concealed truths demands not mere intellectual curiosity, but a profound personal commitment, often entailing irreversible consequences. Importantly, Lucifuge's symbolism does not advocate nihilism or despair. Rather, it affirms that genuine wisdom arises through the disciplined navigation of the unknown. His domain is not the annihilation of meaning, but its occultation, requiring the seeker to cultivate patience, humility, and resilience in the face of uncertainty. In the iconography and ritual texts where he appears, Lucifuge is often depicted as an elusive and commanding figure. Elusive because he dwells in that which is not easily named. Commanding because he guards the thresholds that few are prepared to cross. His challenge to the aspirant is both stark and inescapable. Can you endure the darkness long enough to find the hidden sun within? The engagement with Lucifuge Rofocale, as delineated within traditional grimoires, is situated within a specific framework of ritual practice that reflects broader patterns within the Western magical tradition. The invocation of Lucifuge is neither casual nor spontaneous. It is a highly structured endeavor, governed by precise conditions intended to facilitate contact with an entity who governs domains of hidden knowledge and forbidden power. Central to these ritual operations is the concept of the Crossroads, a liminal space historically associated with transition, danger, and the intersection of multiple realms. In both classical mythology and folk magic, crossroads are regarded as potent sites where the boundaries between the mortal and the spiritual become permeable. In the case of Lucifuge, the crossroads symbolize not only a literal meeting place, but also the internal threshold where the aspirant must confront the paradoxes of aspiration and surrender, ambition, and sacrifice.
In traditional grimoire practice, the crossroads is not a mere convenience, but a symbolic and energetic nexus, a liminal space where the boundaries between worlds grow thin.
The rites involving Lucifuge, as described in the Grand Grimoire and related texts, demand meticulous preparation. Midnight is designated as the appropriate hour for invocation, representing the temporal boundary between days and the thinning of the veil separating worlds. The practitioner is required to create an environment saturated with specific symbolic elements. Circles of protection marked by sacred or inverted names, astrological alignments favorable to the operation, and offerings, often of a deeply transgressive nature, intended to demonstrate the seriousness and desperation of the petition. The practitioner must also engage in the inversion of sacred formulas. Prayers and invocations are deliberately distorted or reversed, a practice that serves to dismantle conventional moral protections and open the ritual space to entities unconstrained by human ethical frameworks. This inversion represents not mere blasphemy for its own sake, but a symbolic unmaking, a deconstruction of ordinary spiritual order to prepare the aspirant for contact with radical otherness. Within these rites, the magician is not a supplicant in the traditional religious sense, but acts as a negotiator, a challenger, and at times even a coercer. The practitioner enters into a compact with Lucifuge, offering their sovereignty, illumination, and ultimately, their soul, in exchange for access to forbidden knowledge and temporal power. The rituals are structured as contracts rather than devotions, emphasizing that no boon is granted without an equivalent sacrifice. The crossroads, therefore, are not merely geographical markers but ritual sites charged with profound symbolic significance. They represent the point at which the aspirant must choose, knowingly and irrevocably, whether to continue along the familiar path of safe ignorance or to diverge into the perilous territory of hidden wisdom. This choice is not without consequence. The rituals make explicit that the power offered by Lucifuge is always counterbalanced by a loss of innocence, of autonomy, or of metaphysical security. Moreover, the ritual's meticulous structure underscores a broader philosophical principle inherent within the grimoire tradition: the belief that the invisible world is governed by laws as rigorous and intricate as those that govern the visible.
The act of ritual at a crossroads constitutes not only a petition to external forces, but an initiatory ordeal. a confrontation with the self's own shadow at the threshold of transformation.
Successful engagement with Lucifuge is not the result of mere emotional intensity or random experimentation, but requires disciplined adherence to esoteric principles, symbolic logic, and the mastery of occult correspondences. Ultimately, the invocation of Lucifuge at the Crossroads epitomizes the essential dynamic of the Western esoteric tradition. The recognition that illumination is purchased through descent, that the ascent toward knowledge necessitates a prior confrontation with darkness, and that every spiritual advancement is marked by profound existential risk. Those who would seek Lucifuge's guidance must therefore proceed with full awareness of the stakes involved, understanding that the journey undertaken at the Crossroads cannot be reversed once commenced. The aspirant must ask themselves, before they step into the circle, are you prepared to pay the price demanded by the hidden road? The figure of Lucifuge Rofocale does not exist in isolation. Rather, he occupies a critical place within a wider cross-cultural tradition of chthonic and infernal spirits, reflecting recurring archetypes that manifest across disparate religious, mythological, and magical systems. His characteristics, flight from the light, custodianship of hidden knowledge, and governance over forbidden domains, find resonance in numerous parallel figures throughout demonology and comparative mythology.
Across cultures and eras, the archetype embodied by Lucifuge Rofocale recurs in myriad forms, suggesting a trans-historical pattern in the human engagement with darkness, secrecy, and forbidden knowledge.
In Greco-Roman traditions, deities such as Hades and Hermes Chthonios embody attributes akin to those associated with Lucifuge. Hades, lord of the underworld, governs realms invisible to mortal eyes, presiding over both death and subterranean wealth. His dominion is not inherently malevolent, but reflects a necessary and inevitable dimension of existence. Similarly, Hermes, in his chthonic aspect, serves as a psychopomp, guiding souls through the liminal spaces between life and death, a role that parallels Lucifuge's function as gatekeeper to hidden realms. In Mesopotamian lore, the figure of Nergal, god of the underworld, bears striking similarities. Nergal embodies both destruction and concealed potency, commanding realms that are simultaneously feared and revered.
These mythological resonances affirm that the figure of Lucifuge is not confined to the pages of any one grimoire, echoes across the psychic architecture of humanity itself.
Within the Christian demonological tradition, figures such as Belial and Mephistopheles offer further analogues. Belial, described in apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts, represents lawlessness and the subversion of divine order. It does so within a framework that paradoxically mirrors celestial hierarchy. Mephistopheles, popularized through Germanic folklore and the Faust legend, serves as an intermediary in pacts between mortals and infernal powers, emphasizing the contractual nature of damnation, a thematic link directly relevant to Lucifuge's role as Prime Minister of Hell. Moreover, in Islamic esoteric thought, the figure of Iblis presents another instructive comparison. Although often simplistically categorized as a devil figure, Iblis's rebellion stems not from chaotic malice, but from an intense devotion to divine singularity, which paradoxically leads to his estrangement from God. His refusal to bow to Adam is an act of fidelity to a principle, highlighting the complex interplay between obedience, pride, and cosmic hierarchy, concepts that echo the paradoxical moral structures surrounding Lucifuge. Such cross-cultural parallels suggest that Lucifuge Rofocale represents not merely a unique invention of Western occultism, but an enduring archetype rooted in the universal human encounter with the unknown. He personifies the tension between seen and unseen, between lawful structure and transgressive aspiration, between illumination and concealment. His persistence across cultural boundaries testifies to the fundamental psychological and existential realities he embodies. It is important to recognize, however, that the specific attributes ascribed to Lucifuge, his emphasis on secrecy, pact-making, and the reversal of light, are products of particular historical conditions. The emergence of Lucifuge in the grimoire traditions of early modern Europe reflects the anxieties of a world undergoing profound transformations, the decline of unified religious authority, the rise of market economies, and the corresponding commodification of spiritual experience. In this light, Lucifuge's role as Prime Minister of Hell, presiding over infernal contracts rather than acts of raw violence, can be seen as an allegory for the transactional nature of power in an increasingly bureaucratic and mercantile society. His figure crystallizes the fear that power is no longer a gift of grace or an inheritance of birthright, but something to be negotiated, purchased, and paid for at existential cost. Thus, Lucifuge Rofocale, while deeply rooted in Western esoteric traditions, participates in a much larger constellation of mythic and psychological structures. His echoes are heard wherever human beings grapple with the price of forbidden knowledge, the dangers of ambition, and the mysteries that lie beyond the reach of ordinary vision. In summoning his name, whether metaphorically or ritually, the aspirant steps into a lineage far older than any single grimoire, participating in an ancient and ongoing dialogue between the known and the unknowable. The eternal question persists. When faced with the threshold between light and shadow, will you dare to cross?